Alrighty guys, so Sasquatch here. We're currently going through Seattle. We're in the express highway. We're just going right through the middle of Seattle. We're not going to stop. None of that this trip. So we're going to drive down the Cascade volcanic arc down in Southern California. Check all that out. So the beginning of it. So we're just crossing the river. That's Seattle over there. You can see the Space Needle. And we'll be heading to the Columbia River Gorge today. Mount St Helens as well. We're going to do some stuff on Mount St Helens. So guys, here we are, Mount St Helens Visitor Center, North Forks. There's another one, there's the actual interpretive center, but this is kind of the one closer to Mount St Helens. So this is a Sasquatch that's made out of Mount St Helens ash. So this whole Sasquatch, it's all made of ash. 22-foot high Sasquatch statue. Big Sasquatch hotspot here, guys. Research, everything. So we're just in the Mount St. Helens Visitor Center, and we have the pleasure today of Joe, who is the curator of this beautiful museum, to kind of guide us through and show us some stuff.
Hello, my name is Joe Bongiovanni. I am the curator and researcher here at North Fork Survivors, the Mount St. Helens Museum in Toutle, Washington. My claim to fame is I am the local historian that covers the sociological impact of the eruption of Mount St. Helens. We see with the other visitor centers a lot of geology, volcanology, environmental recovery. It's relevant subjects. However, 57 people died. Communities were changed, and we're still seeing the effects today. The main thing that we do here is preserve original artifacts and preserve the memories and stories of those that were directly affected by the eruption. So not only 57 people that lost their lives, but people that were involved with the aftermath. So we have rescue personnel, we have warehouser logging teams, reclamation loggers, people that were searching houses, fire, EMS, law enforcement, everybody across the board. Every story is important. How do we get to this point? Well, it's actually inspired by a gentleman by the name of Reed Blackburn. Reed Blackburn, 27-year-old reporter from the Columbian in Vancouver. What we know for Mr. Blackburn is that he was working on a joint project that was between the Columbian and National Geographic magazine. And his job was to go up to Coldwater 2 observation point, which is roughly Castle Lake viewpoint at this point. He's working at a place called Coldwater 1 observation point. And he was there for 9 days. We know on the morning of May 18th, when the mountain erupted, he has this surge coming at him at 400 miles an hour. And he stood there and he did his job. And we know he took 4 photos over about 2 minutes and 40 seconds using a remote operated camera system. He realized he was in a lot of trouble, and he took cover in his 1969 Volvo 144S and braced for impact. The surge went over him at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and he was officially the first victim of the eruption on paper. One of the things we know about Mr. Blackburn is that, like myself, he was an educator. He was interested in teaching, and he would stop at schools on the way to Coldwater 1 observation. He stopped at Kelso, Longview, Castle Rock, Toutle Lake Elementary. And he'd talk to kids about photojournalism and volcanology and all these cool things that are going up there. And he did it on his own time. He wasn't paid for it. I have quite a few of his personal items here, and these items go to schools with me when I do presentations. So essentially, Mr. Blackburn's still teaching after 44 years. His story is associated with the most famous photo ever taken after the eruption, and your viewers will probably recognize this photo. And you may even recognize it. So here's the test, right? It's usually in every documentary and every book and National Geographic and anything you watch, there's always the picture that's Don Swanson from the USGS had gone the following day to see if there was any hope of bringing Mr. Blackburn home. And unfortunately, he did not survive. In this photo, he's in the driver's seat of the car. The car in that photo, the super famous photo, was pulled out in 1981, and it was scrapped. And so we lost this iconic piece of history. But it's pretty common that happens when there are natural disasters and so forth. So now fast forward to a couple of years ago, there's myself, Joe Bongiovanni, Scott Kemery, Eric Cole, and Dave Keeler. The four of us together do work on recovering items and telling these people stories, and we kind of joke and say we're the Black Ops of archaeology. 2 years ago, we came across a collection from a lady by the name of Clara Otteson, and the Otteson family needs to be recognized in this story because Clara collected all of this stuff in 1980, including the vehicles that are outside, and preserved them with the intent of putting them in a museum. She put all of her money and time into creating this museum, and unfortunately, people didn't show up. It was too early after the event, a lot of emotions involved. From there, she took these items and she stored them on her property for the next 43 years, and unfortunately, she passed, and that's where I came into the story. Clara is a historian like myself. I knew her for 12 years. She would never let me see her collection. She would always mention it, and it was like this big secret. And when she passed, her son contacted me and said, hey, you need to come and look at this. We have some cars and items. When I showed up, there were cars from the Eruption and a 20 by 60 building filled with artifacts that nobody had seen in over 4 decades. These items right here that you're filming, you're officially the first YouTuber from Canada to ever set eyes on these because they've been hidden in a building for 43 years.
So this was just recently that these artifacts
You're on
came
the
on
cutting
display.
edge of something new.
Wow.
And it gets better. So your viewers, if they're into the Mount St. Helens story, they're in for a treat. The Coke glass that's sitting right there belonged to Harry Truman, owner of Mount St. Helens Lodge. That is the only Coke glass that belonged to him that exists. Next to that on the left is the little shaving kit, which belonged to Harry also. Clara, as smart as she was, went to Prindle, Washington, knowing that Harry Truman and his wife Eddie had a small home in Prindle along the Columbia River, and Harry called it Eddie's dollhouse. And she went there immediately after the eruption and collected everything and anything that belonged to Harry and his wife and preserved it.
Yeah.
And that's why that survives, because people will look at it and go, how in the world do you get a glass from a volcanic eruption untouched? It's like anybody else. If you have a second home, you use your furnishings,
Yeah.
so everything from the lodge.
Yeah, well, that was my first thought when you said that. I was like, how did that even survive a volcano?
Those items right there actually belong to Robert Landsburg. And his story is associated with these photos right here. Those are the closest photos that were taken to the eruption on the morning of May 18th, 4.5 miles from Mount St. Helens.
Is that the ones that he covered the camera with?
Yes. So what happened was he actually positioned himself accordingly so that he wouldn't get hurt. There was thought that the north side of the mountain could collapse and it'd be a problem. So he positioned himself kind of southwest of the mountain. So if it did collapse, everything went away from him. However, in the photos, according to a friend of mine by the name of Robert Rogers came up with this theory, there's kind of a hillside here and the mountain coming down, and it kind of created this channel. And we think that a jet of the surge was directed at him, and it was about a 1/4 mile wide swath, and he couldn't get away. So rather than try and run, he took the camera off the tripod, rolled the film back into the cylinder, dropped the camera into a backpack, threw it on the ground, and laid on top of it.
What a legend,
and
man.
The surge went over him at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. His car is outside. It's the one that's on the roof with the wheels sticking up. It was a 1969 Dodge Coronet 500. The surge blew it in half and spread it all over the road, and Mr. Landsburg was found 17 days later. Mr. Landsburg's story is quite important because a gentleman by the name of Robert Rogers was integral in Mr. Landsburg being found. Had seen him that morning, on the morning of May 18th, and reported it, and then managed to get a name and went back and talked to local law enforcement, and they finally went out there and they found the wheels of his Dodge Coronet 500 sticking up out of the ash, and they landed and found Mr. Landsburg and his backpack and his film intact. His story has changed recently. When you look online, they talk about him being kind of an amateur photographer that was up there taking pictures and so forth. Dave Keeler, my colleague, and I worked on his car last year in August and September of 2023. We actually took a machine and we turned the car over to see if anything was inside of it. Mr. Landsburg's belongings were still in the car after 43 years. The little tiered section that's here with the Excedrin and the tools and so forth, those came out of his glove compartment. The little case that's right here, we have a grease pen for his camera, his sunglasses, his comb, and 6 of his business cards. And apparently he owned a company called Robert Landsburg Images.
Portland, yeah.
But those are, when they were prepped, the only thing I basically did is just take some of the dust and dirt off of them. That's what they looked like after 43
I can't believe how good shape the glasses are.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Like yeah, like
they were in the glove compartment. In
which
the car
which makes total sense. Wow, that's crazy. What's that flange pipe connection there? Is that?
That is a wheel hub off of a Weyerhaeuser truck.
Oh yeah, because the logging trucks. Yeah,
and a lot of these vehicles were completely blown apart. So here you're seeing about maybe less than 10% of the collection. Again, we have Mr. Blackburn, and who was the inspiration, and his story, we changed some of his story also. The thing that's important is that, like I said, we have myself, Dave Keeler, Eric Cole, and Scott Kemery finding these crazy things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something that that no YouTubers from Canada has ever seen. So let's take a walk. I'm going to take you into the temporary narrative. Excuse the boards and stuff being worked. This will open officially in May of this year. Okay, so I had mentioned that that famous picture we showed from Mr. Blackburn, the car buried in ash and so forth. That car was scrapped. Well, 2 years ago, I found it on a private property. It still exists, and history got it wrong. It wasn't destroyed, and I have it hidden in the building.
Okay. Wow.
And so here is the car from that.
Oh, no
picture.
way. Wow, man. Yeah, so it would have been covered up to here in ash,
yes,
basically.
Right
at the door, yeah. It's honestly in better shape than you would expect, Dave.
After all of these years, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
So here's Mr. Blackburn. We have the famous pictures. These are photos of when the car was initially found. It was in very poor condition. It took a year to bring it back to where we are right now. 2,500 pounds of tephra taken out of the interior of the car. All the little components inside needed to be cataloged and then reconstructed. It was an extensive project.
That's quite a lot of work.
But it still exists.
Yeah, well, and thank you for preserving it too.
It needed to be done. Now, you're a big fan of Robert Landsburg. Behind you, thanks to my friend Robert Rogers, we recovered the tripod that belonged to Robert Landsburg.
Really?
Right now, you are officially the first person from Canada to ever see this tripod. It's only been here a few weeks.
That's
so you are number one right now. And
wow.
You are officially the first YouTuber to ever take a video of it.
I can't believe how good shape it is.
The surge, when it went over Mr. Landsburg's car, there was a lot of kinetic energy in it. It was heat. We do see melting, but it seems like it was a quick kind of surge. We know that kidding. Mr. Landsburg sustained a lot of injuries from more of a concussive shockwave. Tripod itself, we can see that one of the legs was broken off, parts of it is missing. Everything in this room is literally Smithsonian grade artifacts. They're out right now because my colleague Richard Waite and Steve Olson were here to take a look at these things, so we kind of have them out for a show and tell learning. For your viewers, if they want to learn about the Mount St. Helens story, the #1 book that I always recommend is In the Path of Destruction by Richard Waite. That is the #1 book. And then if you want to learn about people in detail, my colleague Steve Olson, it's called Eruption, The Untold Stories of Mount St. Helens. He goes into the story of the people in very fine detail. Those two books, to me, #1 on the list to read. Again, Mr. Landsburg, since you're a fan, this is the dashboard from his 1969 Dodge Coronet 500.
Wow.
One of the things we wanted to know was, did he try and drive away? Did he start the car? The keys were in ignition. He never started the car. The parking brake was on, and the car was...
The shifter is,
in the park. So we know absolutely he didn't try and drive away. According to Robert Rogers, this car was positioned on the road facing away from the mountain in kind of an escape position. But Mr. Landsburg never had time to get to his car. To my left is the only set of clothes
Harry Truman.
existing that belonged to Mr. Truman, and we even have a photo of him
Wow.
wearing the iconic John Deere hat. These came out of Prindle. He had left them there from the lot.
In his house, yeah.
Correct. The boots. Harry used things until they were pretty much wore out. Right here, I'm going to be really naughty and touch something. This is Harry Truman's scrapbook, and inside here, I'll just touch the edge here like this. I don't have my gloves with me. Drawings that he was making when he was working on the Prindle house, and his handwriting right there.
Like I didn't know any of this stuff survived or even existed.
Nobody's known. I didn't know, and I've been doing this since the eruption happened, and I had no idea. I knew that the tripod had been recovered by Mr. Rogers. Unfortunately, I thought he had passed a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And actually, he's still with us and doing wonderful, and has turned out to be a great friend, and has actually donated these items specifically here to tell this story. That is a door from Mr. Landsburg's car. That's what a volcano does to a
door.
4.5 miles.
Like it's kind of hard to grasp like the destruction that it causes.
So 230 square miles flattened in about 9 minutes. The energy expended for almost 9-hour eruption was equivalent to 27,000 modern nuclear weapons.
27,000?
It's more than the entire planet's arsenal in one volcano, the amount of energy that came out of that mountain.
And it's erupted several times since, like effusively, right? After?
Well, we saw a lot of activity. There were actually 26 eruptions between 1980 and 1986. The initial 3 were the biggest. So we had May 18th, 1980, and then we had May 25th, 1980, and then we had June 12th, 1980. So those are the 3 biggest eruptions. After that, they started to kind of turn more into almost like phreatic eruptions where sometimes there were pyroclastic surges. And then in 86, it went quiet, and we didn't see anything until October of 2004 when it became active again, and we had this dome building eruption from 2004 to 2008, and then it went quiet again. The thought is that we'll probably see another dome building eruption because this magma that was responsible for the 1980 eruption was also responsible for the eruptions from 80 to 86 and also the 2004 to 2008.
So do you actively like go out to the mountain and like look for things?
We actually have a group that works with the Forest Service at the National Monument, and what we do is we apply for our research permits and go out and find items. The thing is that because it's federal property, nothing can be removed. We work on behalf of the
government.
Yeah. And generally what happens is they leave items where they are, but we give GPS coordinates. They keep a list of where items are. And yeah, we help them out. There's a few working on right now. In fact, Scott Kemery, I'm going to give a shout out to him. He's been spearheading a project because there is a legend in the Mount St. Helens community about Harry Truman and his hidey hole, or this little cave that he had that he supposedly kept whiskey in and he used throughout his lifetime and so forth.
Those old guys.
Nobody knows where it is.
Yeah.
Well, Scott Kemery found it. He knows where it is. And so we've just recently applied for a permit to go to that location in 2025, and we're going to find out what's in Harry's cave because we know where it is.
The whole thing is going to be functional in May next year?
May.
I'll definitely be coming back for sure.
I always like to put the word out. It takes a community to make this stuff happen. It takes everybody getting involved, whether it be somebody putting information out like yourself. You can reach a lot of followers with your channels and so forth. Sometimes we have people donate items. Sometimes we have people donate funds to make this happen. Beautiful. It takes everybody because these items that are here, they don't belong to me. They belong to you. They belong to everybody that's watching.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the curator. I am the caretaker that yells at you if you try and touch something. You know, it's really funny. My guests that have been coming in here, I actually have a statue I bought. I had it shipped from Egypt because I had guests coming in here and they kept telling me, do you know who you are? You're Anubis. And I said, who? And so after like 25, 30 people saying this to me, I went online and I was like, I gotta find out what are they talking about?
Anubis, yeah.
And apparently he is the keeper of the dead and their belongings and so forth. And I went, that's appropriate. This part right here is representative of obviously what the mountain did.
Yeah.
It also is representative of human spirit, because Mr. Blackburn lost his life in the driver's seat of that car.
Wow.
And that happened because he continued doing what he was there to do. And it's very important to tell his story and make sure that the general public knows exactly who he was and what he was doing there. He's a very young person and had a very bright future. And now he, I act as an interpreter, right? He's still teaching today after all of these years. The amount of room I had and the funds that we had, I was only able to choose one car. And it was a problem because I still have Robert Landsburg's car outside. We have Harold and Joyce Kirkpatrick's pickup truck, and then Arlene and Jolene Edwards on the end. All three of those vehicles need to be preserved. The problem is the means that I have. We can only go.
Yeah.
Anybody watching, if you're a millionaire and don't know what to do and you want to preserve history, give me a call. He'll give you the information. But these all need to be saved. It's not just the person that has money or just the person that donates something. It's every single one of us working together in unison to make stuff happen. That's what it is. Irregardless of, well, you guys are from Canada, right? It's not in the United States. But Canada is our brothers and sisters up there. I don't know. I look at it as the same thing, to be honest.
Well, we're both linked too, right? Like we share the same volcanic arc. Same thing that's causing volcanoes here is causing them up there, right? One of the guys we know, he's 92, and he says he remembers being at Lougheed Highway, which is kind of downtown Vancouver, at a gas station, and he heard a big explosion. And he thought, oh, it's just like construction blasting or something. And then he saw in the news about Mount St Helens.
Yeah. And he realized,
So even from Vancouver, they could hear it.
So what's interesting is people in excess of 200 miles away heard it. People that were here heard nothing. It was absolutely silent.
Because it moves so fast, I guess.
What happens is with these big stratovolcanoes, when they erupt, they kind of put this sonic shock wave out, and it goes up and it hits the upper atmosphere and then bounces in a cone around the mountain. The concussive shock wave goes over you, and then people in Vancouver at a gas station and they hear something. It's a very rare phenomenon. It's actually quite a fun story. There's quite a fun story involved with it, where a young boy south of Portland, Oregon, was outside, and it's, Sunday morning, it's nice, and he hears what sounds like cannon fire in the distance. It was this low toned kind of thumps, like an explosion. He goes to his mom. He's about 15 years old, and he tells his mom that I think the mountain erupted. I can hear it. His mom says, "You can't hear it. We're so far away. No way. There's got to be something else going on in the area." He didn't believe her. So he took a tape recorder and he put it on the windowsill and started recording, and recorded these low-tone thumps, which turned out to actually be the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
wow.
The thing is, this phenomenon is very, very rare, and researchers and scientists don't even have a recording of it. But they do have it from this 15-year-old boy who didn't believe his mom, and to this day is still one of the only recordings of that phenomenon ever, and recorded it from the Mount St. Helens eruption.
That case tractor is beautiful, man.
That's the next project after the museum.
That's what, early 1900s?
1923. So this car right here in the front, this is Mr. Landsburg's car. 1969 Dodge Coronet 500 station wagon. Pretty awesome car to have. I wish it wasn't all mangled like this. And then the Chevy Love right there, 1978 Chevy Love, belonged to Harold and Joyce Kirkpatrick out of Redmond, Oregon, in an area known as Steamboat Rock up by Elk Rock. And their truck was hit from the side and rolled on its axis.
Yeah.
They were found quite late, October of 1980, by reclamation loggers. Nobody knew where they were. The Dodge W100 right here belonged to Arlene Jolene Edwards, mom and daughter, out of Portland, Oregon. They had driven up to Elk Rock to take pictures that morning. They were only supposed to be there a little while. The surge hit the front of their truck and flipped it over onto its roof. And they were 8 miles away from the mountain when that happened.
That's crazy, man.
And Harold and Joyce were almost 9 miles away at that point. See the dashboard? It's melted completely.
Yep.
That's how much heat there was.
400 degrees Fahrenheit. That'll melt almost, well, most things.
Now, to give scale, this is what happened at roughly 8 miles away from the mountain.
Yeah.
You have to understand that the
Yeah.
pyroclastic surge, as it was expanding, continued 10 miles behind them. This was kind of the beginning of it. They weren't even at the halfway point.
That's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. It was 400 miles an hour, the speed of the flows.
So when we did the calculations on the surge moving, the average is about 400 miles per hour. There's caveats depending upon valleys and distance. The overall average is 350 to 400 miles per hour.
That's absolutely, even a plane couldn't outrun that.
Correct. In fact, Keith and Dorothy Toutle were flying over Mount St Helens when the eruption happened. Their pilot put the plane into a dive just to get away from it, and they barely survived. Got amazing pictures, but he dove the plane.
Yeah, it's totally counterintuitive to a pilot, but
Actually, out on the porch here, that's the engine from Mr. Blackburn's car. So the engine and transmission were removed in May of 1981. That was so that the Addison family could pull it up and out of the mud flow. I say mud flow, it's actually the pyroclastic surge deposit. The yellow box is actually a air filter off of a Weyerhaeuser truck. Kenworth Brute, actually. There's still about 35 log trucks missing after all of these years.
did they find like a lot of people, or did they just find a couple people here and there that died?
So on the fringes of the eruption is where most of the victims were found, and there's quite a few that were just never found. So we're gonna walk back in here again because I'm gonna show you an item we have that's actually associated with somebody that wasn't found. This chainsaw right here belonged to Mr. Wally Bowers. Him and Tom Godwa were at Fawn Lake, and they were doing thinning, and they were working a side job just to make some extra money. The pyroclastic surge completely devastated their area. Their pickup truck was blown into small fragments, and Mr. Bowers and Mr. Godwa were never found. His son went with the family, and immediately after the eruption, they went looking for Dad. A lot of families did this because rescue personnel and so forth were completely overrun with what was going on, and families said, "The heck with it, we'll just do it ourselves." And Kevin Bowers found his dad's chainsaw that he had bought in 1979. That was Wally's pride and joy. They found a few other items that belonged to Mr. Bowers, but Mr. Bowers and Mr. Godwell were never found. They're just completely gone.
Yeah.
To this day. This saw Kevin had for many years. He had ended up giving it to a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Tryon out of Vader, Washington. Dwayne had it in his building for a number of years and then contacted us and donated this saw to the museum so that we can tell Wally's story. And I have quite a few retired Weyerhaeuser loggers that come in here, and most of them will say, you know, I lost a friend in the eruption. His name was Wally Bowers. He was a really great person. And I'll say, come with me. I want to show you something, because we have his saw. And we have big, tough logger guys in here that tear up when they see that chainsaw, right? Because it's this connection. Wally Bowers, from everything I've learned about him, was a very, very proud Weyerhaeuser employee. He loved what he did, and he had a heart of gold. He was actually working a side job out by Fawn Lake on a Sunday because he was raising money to try and pay for his wife's medical care. She was in the hospital fighting cancer. And so there he is trying to make money. He loses his life, and then his wife passed 4 weeks later, and the kids are left with no parents because of this event. They made it, but their dad was a hell of a guy. Did what he had to do to take care of people. And every Weyerhaeuser employee that comes in and knew him all says the same thing, that he'd give you the shirt off his back to try and take care of somebody. A really good person. Other people that we talk about here, and I'll refer this for your channel. There's a story on YouTube. It's actually entitled "A Dangerous Glacier Grows in the Crater of Mount St. Helens." That was an OPB, Oregon Public Broadcast.
Yeah, OPB, yeah, okay.
And the geologist that took them into the crater, his name was Charlie Anderson. Charlie Anderson, amazing guy. He studied the crater glacier from literally the first snowflake almost to 2010, his entire career. Documented like 160 trips into the crater. He had stories of hiding behind rocks as ash explosions are coming out of the crater, and he's in it. Amazing human being. And his daughter, Jennifer McGoud, very proud of her dad. Mr. Anderson passed a few years ago, And she donated the entirety of his research to our location to tell his story. I'm on a crusade now, and if anybody from the federal government is watching this channel, I'm coming for you, because right now the glacier in the crater of Mount St. Helens is known as Crater Glacier. Why? Because nobody knows what the heck to call it. So they just, when they do reports and research and so forth, they call it Crater Glacier. My thought is that Crater Glacier should be called Anderson Glacier, after Charlie Anderson. I have to wait until 5 years after his passing before I could submit the request to the federal government to get a name change on a geologic feature. So that's up and coming probably in about 2 years, and we're going to see if we can get Mr. Anderson's name on Mount St. Helens where it should be. He was an independent geologist, not part of the USGS. He coined the term. He was studying the Crater Glacier as well as ice caves and the melt and so forth. He actually came up with a term. It's called glaciospeleological research. Now, as a geologist and getting permits and going into the crater of Mount St. Helens, it allows him to be able to get items for research purposes and geologic samples and so forth. And one of the things he brought back was from the 8086 dome. So that's the dome in the center of the crater, the early one. On the north side of it, there's a hydrothermal vent where water and steam's coming out, and quite a bit of sulfur. These are the only ones in private hands here. These are sulfur crystals from the north side.
Oh, what?
North vent of Mount St. Helens out of the crater.
Wow.
And Charlie Anderson collected those.
That's so cool. Sulfur crystals.
Yeah, they sparkle when you move the light on.
That's incredible.
Really, really beautiful.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
The little volcano here is made by Mr. Anderson, documenting where the crater glacier is. This is pre-digital camera days, where you use a standard 35 millimeter camera, and you take photos and then you stitch them
together. Yeah.
And he was really good at doing that.
Is that Mount Adams in the back?
That's Mount Rainier in the.
Oh, that's Rainier.
Yeah. And we have photos here, his administrative pass, and his spelunking. And we have a lot from Mr. Anderson. He's going to have his own section.
I love how you've got all the specific people, that like the personal touch to it, of like the people that actually did the work here and were involved in all of it.
So everything on this table is associated with a specific name. For example, these two hubcaps, they belong to Robert Landsburg. This is remember the sunglasses you said were in really good condition? That's the glasses case that it came out of. So they were still inside their case when we recovered them. I have the glasses themselves on display. You've seen that famous film from Dave Crockett where he says, "I'm walking towards the only light I can see." He's covered in, there's ash, and he's filming, and there's a little strip of light on the horizon. For your viewers, they probably would recognize it's most famous film taken. He filmed that in 2 films. One film was silent. It was mud flows and so forth. The other was the film we all know with the sound. We know that he tossed the cartridges when he made that film as he's trying to walk out and get back to civilization. My friend Clara knew Dave Crockett, and Dave's still with us. He's in Montana, I believe. And she sent her grandsons to backtrack where Dave Crockett was. And they recovered the 2 film cartridges that Dave made that film with.
That's so cool.
And they still say Como TV on. This is a gate key, we believe, from milepost 33 roadblock. Actually, was from Reed Blackburn.
How far was the red zone where you weren't allowed in?
No, it extended actually 4.5 to 5 miles, depending on where you were on the mountain. It went right around the base of the mountain. There was talk of extending it further. However, the governor at the time decided to go to a rhododendron festival rather than take the advisement of the USGS.
A rhododendron fest? That's so random.
He's supposed to sign the orders on Monday the 19th. They missed it by 1 day. Politics, right? Well, one of the misconceptions with the eruption is that people say that nobody knew that this was going to happen. It was completely caught us off guard. Well, there's 2 people that knew something was going to happen. One being Dave Johnston, everybody knows. And a news reporter talking to him said, in the early days of the mountain waking up, said, "Is there going to be an eruption? Is something going to happen?" And Dave gave the best answer you could ever give. And it basically, word for word, is he said, "Well, the only thing we know right now is that we're standing next to a giant powder keg and the fuse is lit. The problem is we don't know how long the fuse is." Yeah. In the end of April of 1980, this bulge forms on the north side of Mount St. Helens. It's expanding 5 feet a day. So now it's sticking out 400 feet on the north side of Mount St. Helens and still expanding. And they're like, what is this thing going to do? Is it going to blow up? Is it going to slide off? What? So they call in a geophysicist by the name of Barry Voigt. And Barry Voigt, they bring him to Cold Water One observation to take a look at it. And he's a geophysicist that specializes in kind of weird eruptions and landslides and stuff. And they said, well, let us know what you think. Reportedly, he said something to the effect of, look, we could possibly have the north side collapse into the valley. We could have a pyroclastic surge come out of this mountain and expand as much as 20 miles from the mountain. This thing is really dangerous. I say you put a 20-mile circle around it and keep everybody away from it. It's dangerous. USGS posts this information to the states and so forth and says, look, we want to expand this red zone and all that. The state kicks back and says, well, we have revenue, there's logging and there's tourism and all this and state revenue and there's problems. We can't really do that. And that's where this whole thing with leaving for the weekend and stuff happens. May 18th, 1980, St. Helens erupts. It's a lateral surge, and it goes out 18 miles, meaning that Barry Voigt called it within 2 miles of what it actually did.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Now, who in the world was Barry Voigt? I'm sure a lot of our viewers, and even you, probably know the actor Jon Voight. Jon Voight is Barry Voigt's brother. So the fact that people say that nobody knew, it's absolutely false statements.
Did they think that it was going to erupt? Because it was an earthquake, right? A 5.1 earthquake that dislodged a chunk of the mountain that then caused it to explode, right?
Correct.
Did they think that they didn't know that earthquake was going to happen? Did they think that it was just going to explode due to like the buildup in pressure?
They didn't know, but the running hypothesis is that eventually the bulge would overextend itself and shear off during an earthquake. St. Helens was having hundreds of earthquakes. The 5.1 quake on May 18th was the largest in the series from when it woke up on March 20th. If you see that film, the lower part of the mountain kind of disintegrates, and the upper part of it, you see this large block kind of fall forward. It was the reason why all of this happened, because the magma went into the cone, and instead of going up to the top, it hit this cryptodome, and it didn't allow the pressure to escape. So then we get this directed pyroclastic surge. Once the north side collapsed and the surge was done, St. Helens erupted vertically, and the ash column went 12 miles up and then ended up circling the globe. And it's what's called a Plinian column in a volcanic eruption. A straight vertical column came out of it. But by that time, there was nothing left of the mountain to even hold it back.
And it was dark, right? It made the sky, it was like nighttime. I saw the news posts of it, and it was like the sky was all dark. And
there's a famous photo. It's like 12:36 in the afternoon. It's a bank sign that's there in Yakima, and it looks like it's midnight. And places where it rained mud. People figured out the ash was really bad for your car. It's essentially pulverized glass. And when it gets in, it goes through your air filters and so forth. So there was a lot of problems with trying to drive vehicles. Well, it's funny, as a historian, I like to watch things in history where history is kind of cyclic. And we all remember the wonderful pandemic that shall stay unnamed, right? That happened, and everybody was looking for toilet paper and masks. Those are the two things that you couldn't get enough of. In 1980, with the eruption, women's pantyhose was the thing you couldn't find. I don't know if you remember them, but way back in the day, they had these little things that looked like kind of an egg, and you would take them and you would open them up. But somebody figured out that if you took those and you wrapped them around your air filter, it would catch the ash, and then you can periodically take it and shake it out, and you can drive your car in the ash.
That's hilarious.
So immediately the store
just sold out, yeah.
Of all the things because people wanted to drive their car.
Yeah.
We're pretty laid back, but I'll get the door for you, and you can go in. We're gonna head back to the shopping area. My wife Diana, she is the person that keeps the store full of items, and the person that we don't have with me is her mother Laura Lee, who keeps the lights on and all the machine of the business running forward. we all have our place.
Well, you're doing a bit of everything. You're doing archaeology, you're doing science, you're doing geology.
Yeah, I'm a total idiot. I retired 4 years ago. I originally was in ophthalmology, and I decided to retire and do this full time. So us researcher people, we suffer from a syndrome called squirrel. And then as you get off on another track somewhere, when we do live streams, my mother-in-law Laura Lee will watch and she'll ask a question. Seeing that I'm like off or whatever, she'll ask a question. I'll be, oh yeah, we got to talk about. We have a letter sitting right there to the right, and that is a letter from Mount St Helens Lodge, Castle Rock Automotive Supply. And below it, it says, have had bad weather so far, snow, rain, wind, only got to town 2 or 3 times a month. Have just holed in, hope to see you again this summer. Best wishes, Harry. And we have an example of Harry Truman writing his name.
Wow.
It's a letter that he sent. So that letter's in this collection for 40 plus years. And at face value, that is a super cool letter. However, it's much cooler than what we think it is.
Oh.
And
okay.
so it all comes down to a little boy 44 years ago who made a decision and asked his mom to do something. And almost a half a century later, he changed history because he was afraid his friends wouldn't believe what he was saying. It's a beautiful story. The photo that's right there was taken on May 17th, 1980 at the milepost 33 roadblock, which was the roadblock going up to Spirit Lake. It was taken in about somewhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock on May 17th, 1980. The little boy standing in the middle, that's Chris Pullen with the white and red shirt, Harry Truman in the middle, the rest of the family, and his mom, Connie Pullen, took the picture. Harry's probably saying something off color in that photo. So the story goes, Harry came down after everybody had left. What had happened was Governor Dixie Lee Ray had allowed the owners of properties up at Spirit Lake to go and inspect their properties. The property owners were basically at the point where they were ready to storm the gates and go back to their places that they owned. They were tired of the state telling them they couldn't. So Governor Ray just said, okay, we're going to do a compromise. 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you go in with state police escort, you can go check your houses and so forth. Please be out at 6 p.m. And they said, okay, fine. We just want to go check our place. Okay, so they get an escort and they come back down. The milepost 33 roadblock at that point now is locked, and behind it is Harry Truman's pickup truck. And there is the pickup truck behind the gate, courtesy of the Pullen family that took these photos. Harry's truck now is behind there. He can't get out. So he asks Chris, hey, can you do me a favor and can you mail some letters for me? And Chris, knowing who Harry is, the guy's famous, he's on the news and stuff and is completely obnoxious and the public loves him, says, yeah, I'll mail him, sure. So Harry gives him some letters. And again, courtesy of the Pullen family on these photos right
Oh,
here.
wow.
Here's Harry holding the letter. The problem is we can't read it. However, to me, the red of the stamp and the way the writing is on that slight angle is pretty suspicious to me. Now, here's what's fun. Chris now, he gets these letters and he tells his mom, my friends in school won't believe me. I'm like, can you take a picture of me with these letters? And here's Chris standing here, right? So we have Chris and he's holding
Harry's letters, yeah.
Castle Rock Automotive Supply, which is the one sitting right there. They're return envelopes, meaning that they're probably bills or something like that.
Yeah.
This one on the front, the Castle Rock Automotive Supply, says Mount St Helens Lodge. So that means it's directly from the lodge, which we know is a letter to somebody who was writing, a friend. Now, according to Chris, the letter went to Castle Rock, they mailed it, and then from there it went to Portland, and on the top of the letter there is a circle there, and it says PM, May 18th, 1980.
Wow.
Which means that letter was processed the afternoon of May 18th. Harry was gone about 5 hours by the time that was processed.
Wow.
From there it came back up, went to Castle Rock, and was delivered on Monday morning. Now
so
we
cool.
take Chris's story, that letter, the stamp, the photos, put all that together. That means that letter right there is officially the last letter to ever leave Mount St. Helens Lodge, and it left at about 7 p.m. on May 17th, 1980. That is the last one since people settled up there. You never know when you're doing something if you just say, hey, do me a favor, take a picture of this.
Yeah.
That it will change history later on. And that happened May 17th this year is when we
That's when
we
you
put that together.
put all that together, eh? Wow.
Same.
It took 44 years to get it right. The painting that's in the middle there, it looks like a print in a frame of Harry Truman, and it's actually not. What's fun is that was from, when you walk out by the front door of the shop, there's a poster there that talks about Harry's book.
Yep.
It's the same picture. So according to his niece Shirley Rosin, who worked up there for quite a few years, he was a nice person. Harry was a good person. The thing he didn't like was stupid, imbecilic people that brought their problems to you, and people that were rude. He would be done with them instantaneously. The stupid thing was, for example, he had gas pumps up there. And so you got to understand, this place is 100 miles off the beaten path at that time. When you drive out that far, don't you stop and fill up your gas tank before you go?
You would think.
Common sense.
Yeah, you would think.
So Harry had a problem with this. People would drive up there and they'd be out of gas. And then they said, "Can we buy some gas from you?" And he'd go, "No. You're an idiot. You drive up here with no gas? Now you're going to have to figure it out." The other one was people being rude. And a famous story from his niece, Shirley Rosin. There he is at the lake, and husband and wife decides that they want to rent a boat. So he takes him down to the dock. And he says, "Well, we have canoes, we have paddle boats, and we have power boats. This is the prices for this amount of time," and so forth. And the husband turned around and says, "This is too expensive. You know what? You're a crook. You're ripping people off." And so rather than responding, Harry just goes and pushes him into the lake and walks back to the rock. And that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
People didn't like that. If you like dumb stuff, I just acquired these. These are Jim Beam. And they are sealed since 1980. So in 1980, Jim Beam put these together and as a special commemorative, and they still have their seals on them. So
That's so cool.
yeah, kind of fun things.
That is fun, yeah. Right on. Well, thank you, Joe. No words, man, for your museum. It's incredible how much work and effort and the knowledge you have and expertise.
We just do a Google search, put my name, Joe Bon Giovanni, Bigfoot. You'll see a bunch of stuff come up. TV shows, fun stuff like that. Anybody that's watching, if you're in the States right here, my friend Cliff Barrickman is making me go to Squatch Fest in Longview. I usually don't do them, and he called me up and he said, "Yeah, you're going this year," because he wants me to talk about Bigfoot stuff and also promote the museum collection with the people that are there. Cliff's really smart, so I just do what I'm told. Last thing I want to put on there too, for those of you that are out and about, maybe in Canada or whatever, and you want to get involved, you like history and stuff like that, we were talking about donations. I am not a museum curator unless I am begging you people all the time for some sort of help, right? That's what it is, having a museum. If you want to get rich, don't open a museum. It's the worst. There is this right here. You go to GoFundMe. It says, "Help Joe preserve Mount St. Helens artifacts and human history." And we have a GoFundMe. This GoFundMe is specifically to save the vehicles that are outside and the other items that are being lost to weather, and to acquire some that we know where they are. And people are being difficult and saying, "Well, you have to buy them."
That's
It's very annoying. So if you want to help, you just go on that, and anything you do, thank you very much in advance. If you can't help, then get in your car, plane, whatever, and come over and visit. I'll give you a tour.
Okay, guys. Woo! Wow. Damn. That was fun, man. Holy. Mount St. Helens Interpretive Center, North Fork Survivor Center. Joe. Yeah, guys. Joe's knowledge, his expertise, experience, and his collection, frankly, is incredible, guys. Make sure that you go and see him if you're ever in the Portland, Seattle area. It's about an hour and a half drive from Seattle. About an hour and a half maybe from Portland. You got to come check them out, guys. Please support them. Small little interpretive center. They're not big. It's not like a government-funded interpretive center. It's just Joe and his wife holding down the fort. And they're doing some incredible work, guys. Some amazing research, some amazing archaeology, documenting the history, preserving everything. Joe's fantastic, Sasquatch research, everything. Please, guys, make sure that if you ever are in the area and you want to go check out Mount St. Helens, or if you're on your way to Mount St. Helens, please support them. They're amazing people. They're really, really nice. They're fun. The whole experience was incredible, Sasquatch. So anyways, that's going to conclude our Mount St. Helens videos. If you enjoyed, please Like and subscribe to my channel, Sasquatch Prospector. Make sure you go over to the North Fork Survivors YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to Joe's channel. And make sure you check them out their website. I'll have a link in the description below for links and contact information for Joe. That's going to be it for me. Hope you enjoyed it. Sasquatch Prospector out.